Helena Carter pushed open the creaking door of Briggs Outpost, a modest roadside diner perched on the edge of Black Ridge Basin's desolate highways. She moved with a measured grace, guided not by sight but by the light taps of her custom-designed combat cane. At her heels were Nyx and Echo, two Belgian Malinois trained for combat and companionship. Tonight, their posture was tense, muscles coiled beneath their sleek fur. Inside, the warm glow of overhead lamps revealed scratched wooden tables, a few battered chairs, and a jukebox humming softly in the corner. The scent of frying oil and stale coffee lingered in the air. Helena could not see these details, but she sensed them in her own way. The faint whir of a ceiling fan, the muted clanking of dishes, and the slow, steady breathing of weary travelers. She lifted her face slightly, allowing the specialized visor over her eyes to capture the subtle acoustic reverberations in the room. A whisper from a booth in the back caught her attention. "Ghost in the mine, they say. Another one is gone." Helena filed the phrase away. She hadn't come here for rumors, but they had a habit of leading to the truth. Sam Briggs, the diner's owner, noticed her first. Wiping down a table near the back, his broad shoulders betrayed years of military service. When he heard the faint tapping of her cane and recognized the presence of Nyx and Echo, he set aside his towel and stepped forward. Relief, curiosity, and concern flickered across his face. Years ago, he and Helena had served together. He remained one of the few who understood how she had adapted to life after the Ravenfall incident, the mission that robbed her of her sight but honed her into something more. "Helena," Sam greeted her gently, voice warm yet laced with worry. "Haven't seen you around these parts in a while. Guess you heard about the trouble." She nodded, letting the tip of her cane rest lightly on the worn floorboards. Nyx circled around her legs, scanning for any sign of threat. Echo sat by her side, posture alert. "I've been hearing rumors," Helena replied, voice low and calm. "People have gone missing. Not just random robberies or fights. Something else." Sam exhaled, crossing his arms. This region's never been free of outlaws, but the Inferno Wraiths have stepped it up. They've been roaming the highways like they own them. Folks say they're looking for something, or someone. Helena tilted her head slightly, honing in on his voice. "I can hear your worry, Sam. Has anything changed recently?" He took a breath, glancing around the diner to ensure no prying ears were too close. "They're not just random bikers anymore, Helena." His voice dropped lower, tension sharpening with each word. "Some say they've got ties to something bigger. You and I both know there's more happening in this basin than meets the eye." Helena's grip on her cane tightened momentarily. She remembered the old days before she lost her sight, missions that involved dealing with threats the world never learned about. The ghosts of her past stirred in the back of her mind. Meanwhile, Nyx sniffed the air, picking up the faint scent of gun oil and adrenaline. "I appreciate the warning," Helena told Sam, her tone resolute. "But I suspect I'm about to see it for myself." Sam gave a slow nod. "Listen," he said softly. "If you need anything, you know where to find me. Just don't go stirring the hornet's nest alone." Helena offered a small smile in return. "I'll do my best," she replied. "Though if I don't stir it, who will?" The stillness of the diner broke violently when a chorus of roaring engines thundered across the lot outside. The front door swung open, letting in a gust of night air laced with gasoline fumes. A group of men wearing matching leather jackets emblazoned with a crimson skull motif strode inside. Their presence altered the entire atmosphere of Briggs Outpost. Conversations died, and heads turned to track their every move. Leading them was Dominic "Dom" Voss, a tall, lean figure radiating quiet menace. His stride was methodical, his gaze sweeping the room as though assessing it for potential threats or rewards. Behind him, half a dozen other bikers fanned out, claiming seats and forcing several startled diners to shuffle aside. Echo's ears pricked at their approach, and Nyx's posture stiffened in silent warning. Helena, though unable to see their imposing silhouettes, sensed them with startling clarity. The rhythmic beat of their boots on the floor, the tight formation they walked in, and the subdued tension in the room. These men moved like a tactical squad. They were not drunken hooligans stumbling in for a rowdy night. They carried themselves with a grim purpose. "Look at that," someone murmured from a nearby table, half impressed, half afraid. A hush spread as Dom's boot heel clicked to a halt in the middle of the diner. He scanned the patrons, ignoring Sam, who had stepped back behind the counter, watching with guarded eyes. Helena focused on the faint hum of electronics. One of the bikers carried a device emitting low-frequency pulses. She felt them through her visor, and more importantly, Nix and Echo seemed attuned to it, too. Nix tensed, shifting restlessly at Helena's feet. The device sounded like some form of scanner, biometric or otherwise. A thick-set biker with stubble shading his jaw stalked toward Helena, drawn by the sight of her cane and the two dogs flanking her. Well, he muttered with a slow, mocking edge. Didn't expect to see someone like you in a place like this. He sneered at her visor, eyebrows raised. What's with the fancy gear? Echo let out a quiet, warning growl, and Nix stepped forward, protective instincts flaring. Helena raised a hand subtly to calm them, her expression revealing no hint of fear. She could sense the biker's curiosity, tinged with aggression. Sam, still behind the counter, prepared to intervene. Stop, he called out, locking eyes with Dom as the latter advanced. You don't want trouble here. Dom turned his head, his sharp gaze pinning Sam, but an amused smile curled his lips. He lifted a hand, and the thick-set biker paused, refusing to push any closer. We're not here for trouble, old man, Dom said softly, each syllable carrying a warning. We're here for opportunity. Then his attention slid back to Helena. Seems you might be more interesting than the usual crowd around here. Helena held her ground, gripping the cane lightly. Opportunity, she repeated in a calm tone. Whatever you're looking for, I'm not selling. Dom gave a soft laugh. Funny. You talk like you know more than you let on. Sam exhaled slowly. D, you really don't want to do this. She's not who you think she is. Dom's smile never faded. Then let's find out. The air inside Briggs' outpost was thick with tension. Every set of eyes flicked between Helena and Dom, their silent exchange radiating an unspoken challenge. Helena could hear the measured breathing of the men surrounding Dom, trained, disciplined. These weren't your average outlaw bikers. They moved too smoothly and spoke too little. There was a structure to them, an edge that reminded her of the mercenary groups she had encountered in her past life. I don't have time for games, she said coolly. If you have something to say, say it. Dom studied her for a moment, then slowly took a seat at the booth directly across from her. He motioned to one of his men, who slid into the space beside him, pulling a sleek tablet from his jacket. We're looking for someone, Dom said. Someone who knows their way around places they shouldn't be. Someone with certain skills. Helena tilted her head slightly, already disliking the direction of this conversation. And you think I'm that someone? Dom smirked. I know you are. The man with the tablet tapped the screen, and a grainy image flickered to life. A satellite capture of an old underground facility, half buried in desert sand. Helena's grip on her cane tightened. She knew that place. She had been there before. The Shadow Vault, Dom murmured. You know it, don't you? She forced herself to remain still. What makes you think that? Because, Dom leaned forward slightly, voice dropping to a near whisper. You're the last person to make it out of there alive. Sam, still behind the counter, tensed visibly. Helena, don't entertain this. Dom ignored him. That facility holds something we need, and we're willing to pay handsomely for a guide. Someone who understands what's inside. Someone who has survived it. Helena exhaled slowly. And if I refuse? Dom's smirk remained, but there was a dangerous glint in his eye. Then we'll have to find another way. But considering how quickly people have been disappearing lately, I'd say your odds are better with us. The threat hung in the air, unspoken yet heavy. Helena wasn't easily rattled, but this was different. The Shadow Vault wasn't just another abandoned facility. It was a graveyard of secrets, a place she had barely escaped from once. And now, someone wanted back in. She leaned forward, matching Dom's intensity. If you knew anything about that place, you'd know that going back is a death sentence. Dom's smirk faded just a fraction. Then let's hope you're as good as they say. The message was clear. They weren't asking. Helena had a choice to make, and none of her options were good. Helena left Briggs' outpost knowing she was already in too deep. She didn't need to see the wary glances Sam shot her way or hear the low murmurs of the other patrons to understand what had just happened. The Shadow Vault was a name that should have remained buried. Outside, The night air was thick with the scent of dust and gasoline. The Inferno Wraith's bikes rumbled low, their chrome exteriors catching the glow of the neon sign above the diner. Nix and Echo padded at Helena's side, their sharp eyes locked on the gang as she approached her vehicle. Dom's voice stopped her before she reached her truck. "You know, Carter," he said smoothly, "this thing we're after? You're not the only one who's been inside. But you are the only one who came back." Helena stilled, fingers tightening around her cane. "That's so? Then why aren't you asking them for help?" Dom took a few slow steps toward her. "Because the others are dead. Or they wish they were." She turned her head just slightly, gauging his tone. There was something deeper there, something not even he fully understood. "So tell me, Dom," she said, "why are you really after the vault?" He chuckled, the sound low and humorless. "Wouldn't you like to know?" Helena exhaled through her nose. "You think I'll just walk you in there, hand over whatever it is you're after, and walk out? You don't know me very well." "No," Dom admitted, "but I know you want answers. You wouldn't have survived that place if you didn't. And if you help us, maybe we both get what we want." She hated that he had a point. The vault had haunted her for years. Something had happened in there, something she barely remembered. And the worst part? She wasn't sure if it was by choice or design. Helena reached for the truck door. "I'll think about it." Dom smirked. "Do that. But don't take too long. The clock's ticking." She slid into the driver's seat, shutting the door behind her. As she pulled away from the diner, the weight of the past pressed against her chest like a vice. It was happening all over again. And this time, she wasn't sure if she was ready. Helena drove in silence, the desert stretching endlessly beyond the reach of her headlights. Nix and Echo lay curled in the back seat, their bodies tense even at rest. The encounter with Dom had stirred something inside her, an unease she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't naive. The Shadow Vault wasn't a place people stumbled upon. If Dom and his crew knew about it, then someone, somewhere, had whispered its secrets. And secrets like that didn't come cheap. She pulled into her secluded hideout, a cabin nestled between two rocky ridges that offered natural protection from prying eyes. The place was bare bones, just a cot, a weapons cache, and a communication setup she rarely used. It had been her retreat after she left the world behind. Yet now, the world was knocking on her door again. Helena sat at the small wooden table, her fingers tracing the scars along its surface. The Shadow Vault wasn't just another mission gone wrong. It had taken something from her, something she hadn't been able to piece together in the years since. Fragments of memories came in flashes, gunfire echoing through underground corridors, shadows moving unnaturally against the walls, and the sickening scent of burning metal. She needed answers, and there was only one person left who might have them. With a resigned sigh, she turned to the old satellite radio mounted on the wall. It took a few moments to power up, the static crackling before she punched in a secure frequency. "Come on, Fisher," she muttered, listening to the faint hum of the signal. "Pick up." A few agonizing seconds passed before a familiar voice came through. Well, didn't think I'd hear from you again." Helena exhaled. "I need intel." "On the vault." A pause, then a soft chuckle. "Oh, Carter, you really don't want to go digging in that grave." "Someone else already is," she said. "And they know things I don't." Fisher sighed. "Meet me in Dead Man's Gulch at dawn. Bring coffee. The good kind." The line went dead. Helena leaned back, her mind racing. Fisher had been an informant, a fixer, someone who dealt in the underbelly of intelligence operations. If he was hesitant, that meant this went deeper than she had imagined. She checked her gear, loaded her weapons, and set an alarm. Tomorrow, she would step closer to the truth. And she had a feeling she wouldn't like what she found. The desert was still in the early morning hours, the sky painted in muted purples and grays as Helena guided her truck over the uneven dirt road leading into Dead Man's Gulch. Nix and Echo sat upright in the back seat, their ears twitching at the distant sounds of wildlife. The air was crisp, laced with the scent of dust and dry sage. Fisher was already waiting when she arrived. He leaned against an old, battered Jeep, his grizzled features partially obscured by the shadow of his baseball cap. His posture was relaxed, but Helena wasn't fooled. Fisher was the kind of man who was never truly at ease. She stepped out of the truck, a steaming thermos of coffee in hand. "You're late," Fisher called out, his voice roughened by years of chain smoking and bad decisions. Helena smirked, tossing the thermos toward him. "You're lucky I brought the good stuff." Fisher caught it with one hand, popping the lid and taking a long sip. "Damn, maybe I should start answering your calls more often." Helena leaned against the hood of her truck. "Tell me about the vault." Fisher exhaled, his expression growing serious. "You already know it's not just some abandoned facility. Whatever they were working on in there was meant to stay buried. And now, someone's trying to dig it back up. Dom and his crew are after it," Helena confirmed. "They have pieces of intel I don't, and I need to know what I'm walking into." Fisher rubbed his jaw, considering. There were reports, classified ones, about what went down before the vault was sealed. Strange energy readings. Personnel disappearing. Some kind of distortion inside the lower levels. The official story was a containment breach, but I never bought it. Helena's stomach twisted. Distortion? I don't know what it means, Carter. But I do know this. Whatever's inside that place, it's not meant to be found. And if Dom's looking for it, he either doesn't know what he's dealing with, or he thinks he can control it. Helena crossed her arms. Then I need to get there first. Fisher sighed. I was afraid you'd say that. You have coordinates? Fisher hesitated before pulling a folded piece of paper from his pocket. This is the last known map of the site before it went dark. No guarantees it still looks the same. If you're going, you better be ready for whatever's waiting. Helena took the map, tucking it into her jacket. I always am. Fisher studied her for a moment, then shook his head with a rueful smile. Goddamn, Carter. You never could leave a mystery alone. Helena smirked. And you wouldn't have me any other way. As she climbed back into the truck, Fisher called out. Just promise me one thing. If things start getting weird in there, really weird, you get out. No heroics. Helena didn't answer. She wasn't sure she could make that promise. She started the engine, her mind already focused on the road ahead. The Shadow Vault was waiting. And this time, she would uncover the truth. The Shadow Vault wasn't marked on any map, but Helena found it easily enough. Fisher's coordinates led her to a stretch of desert where the sand had swallowed nearly everything, except for a single, weathered bunker door half buried beneath the rock. She parked her truck at a safe distance, scanning the area with her visor. The land was quiet, too quiet. Nix and Echo sniffed the air, their bodies tensed. Something was wrong. As she moved closer, she spotted faint tire tracks leading toward the entrance. Dom's crew had beaten her there. Damn it, she muttered. She approached the bunker door, running her fingers over its rusted metal. It was already unlocked, pried open by force. Helena exhaled, gripping her cane. Time to see what's inside. The air inside was thick with dust and decay. The vault's corridors stretched into darkness, lined with flickering emergency lights that hadn't completely died out. Helena moved carefully, her footsteps echoing off the walls. Nix and Echo padded silently beside her, their ears flicking at every distant noise. Further in, she found signs of recent activity, boot prints in the dust, broken crates that had been hastily searched through. Then she heard it. A distant voice. Helena pressed against the wall, straining to listen. Dom, we need to get deeper. Whatever's down here, it's locked behind level 5 clearance, he was saying. If we don't find a way through, this whole trip's worthless. Helena's grip on her weapon tightened. She moved forward, staying in the shadows. If Dom and his crew were already struggling to get through, then she had an advantage. But the deeper she went, the more the air felt wrong, like something was waiting for them. The lower levels of the vault were different. The walls were slick with condensation, and the lights flickered erratically. Helena could hear a low hum vibrating through the air, almost like a heartbeat. Then came the first scream. It was one of Dom's men. A ragged, choked cry that was suddenly cut off. Then silence. Helena stilled, her breath shallow. Nix let out a low growl, Echo's fur bristling beside him. Something was here. Then she saw it. A shape flickering at the edge of her vision. Not quite human. Not quite real. Dom's voice came again, but this time, it was laced with panic. Fall back. We need to. Another scream. Helena turned a corner and found a body, one of Dom's men, but his face was wrong. Twisted, stretched, as if he had been caught between two realities at once. The hum grew louder. Something in this vault was awake, and it had just begun to feed. Helena moved fast, following the sounds of Dom's remaining men as they tried to escape. The corridors twisted, leading her deeper into the vault's core. She found Dom near a control panel, desperately trying to override a security lockdown. His men were gone. Whatever had taken them had left no remains. He turned, gun raised, but lowered it when he saw her. "Carter? What the hell are you doing here?" "Saving your ass, apparently," she shot back, scanning the panel. "We need to get out. Now." Dom's face was pale, sweat dripping down his temple. "It won't let us. Every exit's sealed. And it's watching." Helena didn't ask what it was. She could feel it, pressing in around them, shifting the air. The vault wasn't just a facility. It was alive, and it was hunting them. The only way out was through the main security override. But to get there, they had to cross the containment sector, the heart of whatever experiment had gone wrong here. Helena led the way, her cane tapping softly against the floor. Every step felt heavy, as if the vault itself was pulling them deeper into its grasp. Then, the shadows moved. A distortion rippled through the air, and suddenly, the corridor wasn't empty. Figures emerged, half-formed, flickering like broken holograms, faces twisted in agony. Echoes of the past. Or maybe, something worse. Dom fired. The bullets passed through them, hitting nothing. Helena didn't hesitate. She reached the control panel and forced a manual override, the system screeching in protest. Alarms blared. The vault shuddered. A voice crackled through the speakers, distorted, inhuman. Helena gritted her teeth. "Watch me." She slammed the final command. The doors burst open. Light flooded in. The figures shrieked, recoiling. The hum reached a deafening pitch, and then silence. Helena and Dom stumbled out into the desert night, the vault ceiling behind them. Whatever lived inside, it stayed trapped. For now, Helena sat on the hood of her truck, watching the sunrise. Dom stood beside her, staring at the sealed entrance to the vault. "We should destroy it," he muttered. Helena took a slow breath. "It won't matter. If people knew what was down there, they'd keep coming. Some doors are meant to stay shut." Dom glanced at her. "And if it ever opens again?" Helena tightened her grip on her cane. "Then we finish it. For good." The wind carried away the last echoes of the vault as the sun rose over the desert. For now, the nightmare was over. But the shadows always waited. The end.